Hello, everybody. This is Love from Above by your Sibling Spirit Guides. I'm Maureen, and this is my brother.
Hey, Maureen. Hey, everyone. This is Brian.
Hello, Brian. We're so happy to be here. If you can believe it, on this podcast, we share daily channelings we receive from star beings, ascended masters, mythical beings who really exist, and occasionally our ancestors. And today's topic is a peek behind the curtain, how channeling really works. We're going to cover the qualifications to channel, the technicalities of channeling, and the watchers gaining the knowledge to communicate more clearly to other beings. So yeah, Brian, you and I never thought we'd be here discussing channeling, but wow, it's changed our lives, and we hope it's our messages help to change other people's lives for the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've talked about this, but it's all been a gift. But this, I thought this. I know we've talked. Maybe you and I have talked about doing something like this as a topic for the podcast. So I'm glad to put this together because I thought it's definitely interesting. I find it interesting. So, anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'll just say that for this podcast, we go through our archives and pull out sessions. So we'll go over a couple of different sessions. And Brian, this first one is just fascinating. It's from February 17th of 2024 on the qualifications for channeling. And let me tell you, it's stuff you would never imagine. So Brian, please kick us off.
All right. It says, "We are present. We are the watchers. Today, we look at the global process of our initiating contact. Our first qualification is receptivity. Will the human be open and capable of receiving messages? The second characteristic is a global intelligence skill. To do this work requires the compartmentalization of the brain, for that is really what being psychic is about. Receiving one message while the egoic mind spins and the body functions as normal. Most humans are not able to add a third spinning plate. This is an important characteristic with which we evaluate carefully. The next is the capacity to love. The human being must be at a point in their development where love is the modus operandi. We also look at the overall health of the species. However, this is something that we can easily correct. The same is true for monetary concerns, although we are loath to delve into this particular aspect of human desire, for there are many lower emotions. And then they went on, but they said we shall resume. Another characteristic which we consider is the overall height of the species. This is a paramount consideration, which we are hesitant to reveal the qualifying factors for for which height is evaluated. It's not appropriate to reveal at this time. Know that there is no greater height or lesser height. We do not wish humans to evaluate this characteristic within their own species. However, it is a characteristic which we consider. Let me just pause there. Isn't that interesting? I mean, I mean, all the ones up to that, yeah, like yeah, no brainer, I got it. That that checks. But then height, why would the height matter for channeling? And any insights, Maureen?
Well, the only thing, I mean, and we don't know what it is. They say there's no greater
Yeah.
or lesser height. So I don't know. It might be proportion. Who knows? But like, I just think of like when I was pregnant, which was many, many years ago. But when I was pregnant, my doctor told me, she's like, you were built to have babies. And I am tall for our listeners. I am tall. But because I'm tall, like there's more space for the baby to expand and grow. And so I didn't have a big stomach because there was a lot of play. So who knows? But it's just that's what I'm telling you. This is a fascinating session because it's stuff you would never think about. You'd never be like, oh well, I'm a perfect channel because because of my height. You know what I mean? You would never associate or correlate the two of them, right?
Right, right. That's what that's so interesting.
Yeah.
So I'll go on. It says then the alignment of the chakras is essential for this work. However, again, that characteristic is something that we can affect. However, we prefer to work with someone in the individual species who has learned to correctly align their own energetic centers. These centers have become known to your individual personages for their unique capacities and unique characteristics. There is more to these centers than humans are presently aware of, but you've caught the general gist of the matter. Another characteristic we consider is the shape and the arc of the eyebrow, which allows access to the pineal gland. So that's another really interesting one. But let me finish off and then we'll come back to that. Finally, we consider the lineage of the star being in question. As you realize, we could not contact you without accessing your beloved grandparents. These ancestral connections are essential for establishing and maintaining contact. We need beings with ancestors devoted to their line. In this way, you are indeed fortunate. Your grandfather's always with you. We're lucky for his constant devotion to us. There are other characteristics that we consider as well. These may be unique to that personage, a particular talent or skill, a capacity to love, a unique characteristic trait. These are all evaluated in the mix before establishing the desired contact. Then you went on to say, this is you speaking, they remind me that I've had contact with them before. And you said, Brian, that I've had contact with them, but not in the same way. This is not our first meeting. And then they say, we've established contact in previous life forms, however, never to this degree. They were glimpses in the night. This is the first time we've been able to establish a formal relationship. And for this, we are deeply grateful. So, so many interesting things to cover. The other things that I wanted to get your input is the shape and the arc of the eyebrow allows us access the pineal gland, which I think is super interesting. And then, our grandparents on my father's side, I didn't realize I knew that, they were always around, but I didn't just after reading this that they're the connection that allowed this channeling to happen, which I guess I forgot about, to be honest. So what sort of resonated with you?
Yeah, we did another podcast. Because remember we talked about this on air, how I stopped having it's common for a woman to have her eyebrows tweezed and
Yes.
I stopped doing that because so I told you listeners, if you run into Brian and we eyebrows are untamed. But seriously, I don't want to, this has become an important part of my life. I don't want it to interact with my ability to channel. And yeah, I did remember that with our grandparents that for how I see it, it's kind of like a fishing line. And it's like we could only cast our line out so far, and we wouldn't be able to reach these angelic beings. The Watchers are a form of angels, but it's our ancestors who helped to strengthen and lengthen that line so we're able to make this connection. So we couldn't do it unless we had, grandma and grandpa with us at all times to assist with it, which is just fascinating. I mean, I'm so glad you put this together, Brian, because it is like you said, a behind the scenes, how do you channel? And maybe if you have all the other characteristics, you need to connect with your ancestors before you are able to make this final connection. But who knew, Brian? Who knew?
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. So I'm glad they shared this with us. I think it was really interesting. And yeah. All
And
right.
the other
So,
thing they said, I remember with the grandparents in a different channeling session we got early on, it's not only the connection to our grandparents, but if our listeners remember, the first 11 weeks, like all of the focus was on mathematics, or the majority of the focus was on mathematics. And it was also that, and we didn't realize that this about our grandpa, but he must have had, I mean, our father was a brilliant mathematician and recognized in his field as, just as a real genius. But obviously, our grandparents had this ability as well. So who knew? I mean, just who knew? So I'll go on to the next one, which is further advancing the technicalities of channeling from March 11th, 2024. We ask that, we ask that we see them in his mind, which is attuned to the love and the light of the one creator, is easily receptacle for the natural forces that whirl and twirl about the planet. This is a proper visualization to enact. So then they're giving me this visualization, and I see a radio tower as an umbrella within the form of the mind based on the pineal gland. So imagine your pineal gland, and then imagine like a radio tower disseminating everything from that. And they said this is a proper visualization to act as a receptacle to receive. The receptivity begins in the mind, however, carries through the entire being, as your sister can test. The entire physical body is involved in a channeling session. It is best to begin when the mind is clear and wide open. The technicalities of how these messages are received are indeed a wondrous feat. It takes a balancing act on the part of the sender and the receiver that is not unlike an acrobatic act of one of your so-called circuses. The flexibility that is required to secure the tendons is a fantastical feat. However, as your sister has now become accustomed to her signature call, the dangerous elements, which Brian, I did not even realize there were any dangerous elements of the connection, grow less and less. That is all, dearest one. We are delighted by your loving presence and look forward to developing future relations and strengthening our bonds. We are the watchers. So, you know what I find fascinating about this is they use the word tendons, because constantly when I'm channeling, they use the word tentacles.
Right.
So, yeah, I quite often like we're securing our tentacles, and what the heck does that mean? Or my tentacles, or I didn't even know I had any tentacles. So I
Well, I
don't
think of, they talk about that silver line that connects you, and when
Right.
when it severs, you pass on, right? And but I mean, I think is these I don't know, I've always visions like the star beings that coming down and connecting to you to share the information. There is some sort of, although not physical, but some etheric string attached to them so that they can share this information. And I think that the dangerous elements, I know, when the law of the Ra and the law of one, and they were concerned with that too, or they had, I don't think there's as many the negative entities around anymore. But anyway, that's the case. If some sort of, you know, if you're open like this, that if you could get intercepted by some negative being, and I think the more that you're comfortable, what the sensation is from doing this, what to expect, and it's making sure that you're connecting. And I don't know, that was my reading. Would that make sense?
Yeah, and that is an issue. I mean, or it was an issue. I think for those of us who are open to receiving, when I would always work with younger people who were awakening to their powers, like the first thing that you focus on is protection. And because, you can pick up everything, and you can pick up stuff you don't want to pick up. But, I've been doing this for so long, and then I remember it was probably a decade ago. I had an intuitive friend, and I used to do so much protection work, and she was intuitive, and she could see my light and my aura. And she said, Maureen, you are such a bright ball of light, like nothing can touch you. So yeah, and I do protection work every day, as I know you do too. I call an archangel Michael, I call on the Nagas, and I call on a bunch of people to help assist with protection. But yeah, interesting. Like who knew? Who knew?
Yeah, and then there was I did have some other ones I didn't add, but the one thing that was there was a lot of different sessions that talked about like it's sort of like exercising or doing anything. Like once you make a routine of it, the easier it becomes, right? So the more channeling
Y-
you do, it's like strengthening that connection and so forth. So, but that's another thing that I want to mention. It I didn't include some of those sessions, but that's a consistent theme that was in a number of different sessions too.
Yeah, and thank you for reminding me that. So I didn't I flew back home yesterday and I did get into late and they were rocking me last night and they wanted to communicate. And I was like, oh guys, so tired, so tired, so tired. But I've been admonished for that in the past. Like you really, because I didn't channel yesterday, and that it's really important for me to make this connection every day because it is and I don't understand that fully, but it is really important for me to do that even when I'm tired.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing that for all of us. So I'll go on the next one, and that's from December 18th of 2024 from the Watchers. It's around amending human records for clearer communication with the one creator. We are the brethren of the divine holy light. We expand the creator's loving presence within the hearts of many. You have called upon us to grow what you can receive. This is easily done with our natural assistance. We require you to stop fidgeting. And then he said, I feel waves moving up my body. The pleasurable sensations are electrified signals which will tune your body to the highest vibration of love. You're right to call upon the masters to see to their greater wisdom and ultimate knowledge of all that has occurred. We recede as another comes forward. I come forward to renegotiate the terms of our original proposition. We now wish for you to amend the records of your chosen kind. We shall go forth with loving urgency to all with willing eyes to hear these phrases. We adopt a neutral tone. However, our excitement is grand. We are fortuitously gaining the knowledge to communicate more clearly to other beings. This is most exciting and a rapid development that has recently occurred. We acknowledge that the database that you have acquired has errors. However, the consistency of the unified message of the one creator is plainly obvious to all those that can see. We retire. So this is a bit of a weird one. What do you make of it? There's a lot of things going on there, but I have somewhat times, as we say, a lot of times more questions than answers on this one.
Well, when I see from this one, and this is unusual, and I don't have any answer for this, but so I always feel this rocking sensation, and that's when I know, boom, 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 time to channel. But sometimes it feels differently, and I could recognize, like when we were first channeling, like I could recognize certain beings based on the sensation. And so I don't know. So obviously this was like a different sensation than the other sensation, but it's interesting that when I'm attuning to is the highest vibration of love. So yeah, it's just I don't know. It's fascinating. And I do know there's a lot of times for those of you, I remind you, we have all of these sessions in our first book. We just published all of the sessions in order. We call it Volume 1 of Love from Above by the Sibling Spirit Guides, but we're working on Volume 2. But you can see how there's a lot of times where like I don't understand a word, or a lot of times they communicate with a language that's much more advanced than my language, and I don't understand it. But it doesn't really matter because I guess the unified message is plain to see. So that's a blessing, right?
Yeah, and I think it's also cool that, you know, they've gained the knowledge to communicate to other beings too. So I don't know, I thought this was the Watchers. That might have been, this is a part of a message, maybe not the whole message, but, or if it was it also called out that it was some other beings. But anyway, it's just interesting that they've made developments in the ability to communicate with others. Not sure what they were saying about this database as acquired errors. I don't understand that, but anyway, but like you said, the consistency of the unified message is what really matters. So,
Yeah, I think that's what I said. Like, there's just a lot of times they communicate, and so how I receive these messages is like I'll like hear the word in my head, and then a lot of times I'll see a visual too. But like sometimes if that word if you don't have a word, so say it's a medical term, you know what I mean? Say it's a medical term or a part of the brain. I- My medical knowledge is, you know what I mean? I don't know what that is, but they're using the most precise language. But I've never seen that word. So then I can't, I'm like, I don't know what the heck that is. A lot of times, and Brian, you listen to these messages. A lot of times I'm like, okay, it's benefit. No, it's beneficial. No, you hear it as I'm trying to pick out the word. And then when I do get the word, it's like a ding, ding, ding. But sometimes I don't. And I just have to, for those of you who've read our book, it just says unknown word. I don't know what the heck it is, but it doesn't really matter because the message is plain. But it's fascinating because Brian, they are communicating with the most precise and accurate words, but we don't have access to you know what I mean? If only I knew every medical term, you know what I mean? I don't.
yeah, yeah,
So I'll go
yeah.
on to oh, do you want to say anything else?
No, no. I mean, that's all you can do. Do the best you can do, and that's you can't know words that aren't in your mind. So, but yeah,
Yeah, one time they did tell me I needed to expand my vocabulary, and I think my vocabulary is extensive. I mean, I really do think my vocabulary is extensive, but in their eyes, I think it's rudimentary, but it's all good. Anyway, this is a closing from October 25th, 2025. And this is working on us. And I think we've said this in past podcasts, just because they're working on us does not mean they're working on you. They're working on you too. So this is a universal action. They say, darling one, we attest to your bodily presence. We come in full fruition and tend to the body now. And then I noted, I said, I don't feel wavy, wavy, which is the normal rocking sensation I feel. I said, how do I describe this feeling? It's like I'm in a massager, but it's only the front part of my body that's massaged. And I was like, it's quite delightful. And they said, we are pleased you enjoy the physical sensations of our luminous touch. So imagine that, Brian, they're touching me. Like, what a blessing. We awaken the gentrified portions within your luminous heart and reunify with parts deadened through dull repetition. You know not of what we speak. This process shall take about a minute. We encourage the brother to lay supine as he engages in this message. He will feel similar sensations. We bless the duo with rare insight into the inner workings of this magnificent place you call home. We shall retire, but the work shall continue. Brian, do you remember feeling the sensations after I channeled this?
I can't say that I do, but I do. That's one thing I do feel like when I'm, meditating or when I'm different things, I do feel the energy when they're working on me a lot. So it is something I feel on a regular basis. So yeah, I'm always grateful for anything like that. Anything, you know. a- anything they want to help out with or whatever they're doing, it's all, for our greater good. So I'm all for it. But yeah, this is, it's something that, yeah, I'm glad you mentioned it's not just us, it's available to everyone. And it's, something that you just have to be open to and ask for, and that shit can happen.
Yeah, I mean, and everybody has different beings working with them. I remember one time when your daughter slept in the same room with us, with me, and I saw a guy, and he looked like Saint Nick, and he had like a big sack, and he was at the end of the bed, and he was like, sending all of these beautiful divine light things into your daughter's aura. So everybody's got it, I mean, everybody's got it. I find it interesting. They said they're working on the gentrified portions within my heart and reunifying with parts deadened through dull repetition. I don't know what the heck that is, but
Yeah,
God
I
bless
know.
them for doing that. And again, it's like our science, and I don't want to be critical of anything because, of course, we're grateful for all of the medical care that we have, but it is basic. You know what I mean? It's just basic. And you have to go to a whole separate to work on energy work. You have the Western doctors, and then you have to go to someone. That's at least how I work. I do work with a Western doctor, but then I also work with people who work with my energy, because you got to work on both, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So any final thoughts, brother?
No, no. Thanks for all your channeling to make this possible. But yeah, I just thought that this would be interesting for everyone, and hope you all enjoyed it.
Yeah. And thank you all for listening. And we also want to thank all of the beings who we've been blessed to have communication with. None of this would be possible without them. And we're so grateful for them blessing our lives and hopefully blessing your lives as well.